We just heard from some students who have protested the PARCC exams this week. Now let's get to our line opinion panelists to take on this issue. I'm joined at the table by Mark Boitano. He's a former New Mexico State Senator. Sophie Martin, an attorney and editor of DukeCityFix.com. Rob Nicoleski is back. He's from Watchdog.org. And Laura Sanchez-Rivey from Sanchez Legal Solutions. Thank you all for being here. Rob, interesting to look back on the protests that ginned up last week, a little bit on Monday and Tuesday, not so much. Let's sort of backtrack a little bit and talk about what the fundamental issue was for the students that had a problem with the PARCC test. What was going on there?
Well, I think that's a really good question, because one of the things that I've taken away from this is that there's a lot of negativity towards these tests, but the negativity, I think, is rather unfocused. Some of it's people say, well, this is an example of too much testing, and we're adding another test, but it's not. We're not adding another test. It's taking the place of the SBA. Then there's other people that complain that the tests are being jammed down their throats, and certainly implying that the Martinez administration is doing it. But on the other hand, Arne Duncan and the Obama administration are definitely behind these tests as well. So I think that a lot of the stuff has been rather, like, as I said, rather unfocused. And I think that we've got a lot of students who are upset about this, and I think the other aspect of this is you cannot overlook the political aspect of this. And I don't think it's any coincidence that Hannah Skandera just got confirmed, and then just by, I think it's more than coincidence that now we're getting a lot of pushback about this.
Yeah, Laura, good to see you again, by the way. It's been a while. Interesting to hear the quotes change a little bit over time, and I think once the prospect of students realizing, high school students, excuse me, that there's a possibility of not graduating or not getting your diploma, kind of changed the language and the discussion a little bit.
Absolutely.
Coming into late Friday and especially over the weekend and Monday. What was your sense of that?
Well, I found, it was interesting that the Santa Fe schools, the Santa Fe students who protested did it on Friday. They didn't walk out of the test, they walked out of class. And I think that was well timed as far as that kind of demonstration. And then it sort of happened later in Albuquerque, where it really had an impact on a lot of those students. They got a 0, is my understanding, for the day or whatever on that portion of the test, and that could impact the graduation. That's pretty steep. Those are pretty steep consequences.
Senator, there's a point to be made. The students made it, but there's a consequence sometimes. And that's a big, fat adult thing in this world, isn't it? If you want to do something, that's okay, but there is a consequence. Is the consequence fair? You know what I mean, about the danger of not graduating, or is that just the way it goes? You got to test your way out of high school at some point.
Well, I think, the bigger question is we've got facts, myths, and politics around this issue. And if you look at it's important to understand the facts. So the fact of the matter is that if one student doesn't opt out under district guidelines, it affects the entire school.
In what way?
Well, if the school doesn't test 95% of its students, it affects their grade.
The entire school's grade.
Right.
Okay.
So this is a part of the facts I think students and parents and all of us need to be aware of. Other fact is, word on the street is we're testing more. Actually, the fact is we're testing less. We used to have an exit exam plus an annual assessment. Well, we've merged the exit exam and the annual assessment. So the fact of the matter is that we're testing less now than 5 years ago. So those are the facts and the myths. And there's a lot of politics, as Rob said, tied into this. So we heard a lot of rhetoric about Hannah Skandera and Governor Susana Martinez and whatnot. Bottom line is we have to increase expectations. Some parts of our school system are on the way to the emergency room. We have increased expectations, and a part of that is a test that's more challenging than the tests that we've had in the past. That's a fact, and we have to deal with it.
Sophie, the Senator makes a good point in bringing up Ms. Skandera and the fact that she anticipates actually scores not doing so well the first time around here. Now, it's not going to be held against the teachers, but I'm curious about your sense of that. It's a tough test compared to what we had before.
It is a tough test, and people who have reported on, grown-ups who have reported on taking it have expressed some concern. I will say, as somebody who works with test takers through the UNM Anderson School, that often for adults, looking back at what we learned in middle school and high school, that stuff seems screamingly hard because we've been away from it for a long time. But that said, I think another interesting thing about what Secretary Scandera has said is that right now, at this point, we're looking at these tests being 10% of a teacher's evaluation. In 3 years, she says it will be 100% of the teacher's evaluations. And so we see concerns from children, from teens, from parents, but we're also seeing concerns from teachers who are looking at this exam and saying, I see the students in front of me, regardless of the height of the standard that I set for them, this is a significantly more difficult test, and I am going to have to find a way to bring kids up to a great extent because of that 100% target. And so I think, you know, we shouldn't be surprised that there's this kind of pushback. I have to say, I do feel that there's coercion, a certain amount of coercion that comes from you take the test. Oh, you can opt out, you can take the test, but you may not graduate. I find that really troubling.
Interesting.
Well, I think they said that you can graduate. There are other ways.
Scholarships are affected if you don't graduate in the standard way.
Right, but if you're just looking to graduate, you don't have to take the PARCC test, although there are other opportunities.
Right.
I wanted to follow up on one thing that you said about 100%. Now, is that different from the teacher evaluations, where we've heard lots of arguments about the teacher evaluations being 50% of a teacher's evaluation?
So Secretary Scandera, at least from what I've seen, Secretary Scandera has not broken out the teacher evaluation for 2018. But what I read was that she's saying these tests are going to be 100%. I don't know if it's 100% of tests or 100% of what, but that's the number she's floated out there. It sounded to me like what she was saying was your evaluation is this test.
Well, that's a part of the fiction. So the reality is school districts, when we look at teacher evaluation, some can do 50%. The charter school that I work with, we actually apply 35% of the test scores toward a teacher evaluation. So there is flexibility. The other thing is, when it comes to PARCC as an exit exam, it's really challenging, which is the way we wanted to do it, because the old exit exam, I don't know if you saw it, it tested, no, this was the competency exam, the old one. 11th graders were taking it, and it was testing 8th grade material. Wow. It was crazy, ridiculously easy. So we've set the bar much higher, and there are options and alternatives to the exit exam too. So we're talking about not only an assessment, but an exit exam that's more challenging, and it should be with an opt-out.
And Laura, I'm glad you brought that back, Senator. Should we not be at a fork in the road about how we attack education here? Should we not actually have a difficult hurdle to climb that over time eventually starts raising the bar incrementally? Isn't this just the opportunity that folks that support this are getting at here?
I think that we should have, we are at a fork in the road. I think we definitely need to figure out how to set the bar higher to make sure our children are prepared, and certainly that they've learned what they need to learn. I think what the controversy has been is that this particular test is new, hasn't been taught. It's not really known what's on it for the most part. And it seems like something that's being imposed right now. I think there needs to be a lot more information. The senator mentioned the facts, myths, and politics. There needs to be a lot more information on the facts, and maybe more time trying to outreach to students and explain, much like I think Los Alamos was one of the school districts that took time. Their principal actually sat down with students, tried to address some of their concerns proactively to try to avoid some of the protests that were happening. And I think that what you see in other schools, like in Albuquerque and Santa Fe, that didn't occur. Right. So that creates that frustration from students. And I think there is an opt-out option. There were forms being filled out and so forth. But what I saw is that, people in the know, parents who understand and are active in their school board process, active with all that, knew that there were forms online. A lot of students didn't. A lot of parents, and unfortunately, I think there was a diversity issue there. People who walked out in Albuquerque and Atrisco Heritage, a lot of those folks may not have been aware that there were opt-out provisions.
And there's been a thought, Rob Nikolajewski, that some kids may have been led by the nose here a little bit and that kind of thing. These things sort of shake out. Yeah. But casting forward, I'm interested to sort of just think about what happens after this, because we'll have these results. If Ms. Scandera is correct, they won't show all that great, or we could be surprised. Maybe New Mexico does better at this than we might be anticipating. And then the big fight starts after that. Do you know what I mean? We're going to have a real good one after that.
It's a no-win proposition either way. You know, if New Mexico does pretty well on the test,
that's right,
then I don't think you're going to get a whole lot of credit for that. And if the students do poorly, then they're going to say, "See, this is exactly what we."
I mean, does that hasten teacher resignations? Does that, you know what I mean? There's a whole set of things here that could happen potentially from this. You know.
Well, I think what gives some people some heartburn is, I mean, if you don't like the test, if you want to protest it, fine,
right,
terrific, but don't do it during class. You know, I mean, you can do it before class or after class, and I think that's what's bothering.
Let's see how the parents fit into this after a while too. This is all very interesting. And that's all the time we have for this one. Now, imagine. Well, we'll come back to this, I'm sure. Again, in the future. Now, up next, we hear two perspectives on the proposed Gila River Diversion Project.